Welcome everyone to Bad Sydney again. This is probably not the first session you've been to, and thanks very much for coming early because I actually have to disappear here, out of here pretty fast to get to Goulburn by 6:30. So thank you for coming early and agreeing to do so, and thank you to the panellists for also agreeing to do so. We acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional owners of this land and pay respect to the elders past and present. I'm Michael Brissenden, and of course I'm very delighted to welcome you here to the Dixon Room. With us we have Hayley Scrivenor, who burst onto the crime writing scene a few years ago with her debut Dirt Town, which was a huge hit, and has now written a fabulous book called Girl Falling, and she's been shortlisted for many prestigious awards so far, and no doubt many more to come. Nicola Moriarty, who I learned from her website, was when she was 11, her primary school teacher Mr. Bamford wrote these words on her school report: "Nicola has a gift to be able to write excellent stories in a short period of time," which is a skill we'd all very much like to have. And if anyone has that skill, excellent stories in a short period of time, it's Candice Fox, probably one of the most prolific crime writers of the moment. The author of many best-selling crime novels, 10 on her own, and a number of others in collaboration with James Patterson. And her books have attracted film and TV interest. Crimson Lake was made into the major series Troppo, and she tells me she's now working with a minor Hollywood director, Ridley Scott.
Now, that was supposed to be a secret.
Yeah, sure, right.
Keep it in the room, everyone. I'm incredibly proud of that, though. I feel like shouting it out. Like, I've been dropping that all week. Ridley Scott, yeah. Ridley Scott.
I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of dropping it again, so I thought I'd...
I don't drop it, I throw it.
So I'll just give a quick précis of the three books that we have here. So Hayley's book, Girl Falling, is a story of three young women, two old friends and two new lovers. All of them have secrets. In Nicola's book, a woman lays dying. She doesn't know who tried to kill her, and there are several suspects, including some within her dysfunctional family and in her deceitful circle of friends. And Candice, who's written a book about a toxic, dysfunctional family of a different sort, a bunch of firefighters who are a very close-knit and bonded group, all of whom also have secrets in one way or another. So the title of the session is How Do We Know Whether Those Who Claimed to Be on Our Side are Working For or Against Us, which, you know, seems to be basically the central premise of pretty much every crime fiction book. But maybe we should just start with that. Hayley, how do we?
Well, I think when I started writing Girl Falling, I really wanted to talk about the fact that we kind of only have access to our own reality, really, at the end of the day. That's the cold, hard truth of being a human being. And so I wanted to write about someone who was really questioning their version of events. And the whole book is sort of, it kind of opens with her going, how do I know, or how do I tell this story in a way that it makes sense? And I think one thing we talk about a lot is like relationship breakdowns when it comes to someone you love. But in Girl Falling, I really wanted to explore what happens when a friendship that has been a source of solace and a source of kind of extreme comfort turns sour and becomes something much more toxic.
And sort of toxic relationships are really at the heart of all of your books. And Nicola, your protagonist is particularly toxic. Difficult to write?
Yes. That's on okay? They seem very quiet, the mics.
Yeah.
Oh, hello?
Oh, okay.
That'll do it.
All right. Yes, Harriet was very difficult to write because she is quite unlikable. And she took a few drafts as well because I really had to pull back a bit because my editors were saying, I don't think the readers are going to care about the fact that she's lying there dying. They're going to just be, you know, rooting for all the potential suspects. So had to bring in a bit more light and dark with her. But yeah, I think, and I love that idea of the unreliable narrator and the fact that you don't know everybody you meet really what's going on beyond the surface.
And Candice, pretty much everyone in that little group of firefighters is a toxic individual in one way or another, aren't they?
They are.
I started this book with the idea, it wasn't originally firefighters, it was a crew of builders who were building a deck at my house, and they just oozed with, criminality and toxicity, and just, I had them at the house setting up on that first day, and I was there listening to them talking to each other and watching their physical dynamic, and I said to my husband, I'm going to become a part of this crew. I need to get out there and get involved. Toxic male relationships just fascinate me. I was in the Navy for some reason when I was...
Unlike toxic female relationships?
Well, just, toxic female relationships I know a lot about. Like, I'm well versed in that since I was a kid, at high school. They aren't mysterious to me. But men in groups picking on each other, figuring out who's the alpha, and with these builders it was just very overt, and so I just wanted to get in there and get amongst it, and I did that. I infiltrated them. It took a while, but they were just this incredible source of inspiration. They had their terrifying alpha, and then they had their, little apprentice who they were constantly doing things to traumatize him in different ways. And they had their sort of typecast psychopath character who they all didn't trust in certain ways but had to tolerate. It was just so great. I had this biosphere in my own backyard of these characters, and I have, like you said, I'm working on my 21st novel right now. Very rarely have I ever used real people to inspire the guys so closely. And I actually named them all of their real names in the manuscript originally, and then I thought, I can't change it now. So the character of Matt is inspired by a guy named Matt, and the Engo character, I really hope that the real Engo doesn't find out who that is, because he knows where I live. No, it's good. It's fun.
And he knows where the structural kind of weaknesses in your home dwelling are.
Oh, just, just got to live with it.
And Hayley, in your book, Daphne is a particularly also a manipulative and controlling individual who is very hard to like. But of course, it doesn't always turn out the way you think it's going to turn out. And, without giving too much away, but she's a very difficult character, right?
Yeah, certainly, she's a hard character to like. And so for context, we're in, the book is in first person, and we're in the mind of Finn. So Finlay Young is her name, and she meets Daphne when they're in high school, and Daphne is almost feels like this otherworldly creature. She's quite beautiful, but she's also really smart. She's into Greek mythology, she tells the story of Daphne, she was a goddess who was turned into a tree to avoid being sexually assaulted, basically. It's she's sort of telling this joke about her name and how it's the ultimate power move. And all Finlay can think of is Daphne, the hot one from Scooby-Doo. and that's kind of the dynamic that they have. Finn feels incredibly lucky to have someone like Daphne who seems incredibly sophisticated and intelligent in her sphere. But what I don't think Finn fully realises, and what I wanted to bring the reader in on, is that Finn doesn't see actually how much she offers Daphne and how much Daphne needs to be adored and needs that kind of... And I guess I was really interested in bringing together two people who had personalities that maybe apart work fine for them, but when you bring them together, they almost feed each other's worst impulses. And so for Finn, that impulse is shame. That's her go-to. And then for Daphne, her impulse is almost like that power trip that she gets. And I know Daphne is a hard character to love, but I do love all my characters, and I have to give them a healthy whack of myself in order to...
There's nothing wrong with a character that's hard to love.
No,
exactly. It's actually pretty good when you're reading it, right?
Well, and I think so much of her stuff comes from a place of insecurity, actually. And so she's just desperate, and she needs Finn to kind of pump her up. And so when she feels Finn being pulled away gently by Magdu, who is my most mentally sane and healthy character in the whole book, she's an international student studying psychology when she meets Finn, and kind of just lights Finn up. Like, if you've ever met someone who sort of just shows you that something else is possible and brings out a side of yourself that you really like. So yeah, Magdu and Daphne feel like two ends of a spectrum, and Finn's kind of in the middle, and she's wavering between the two versions of herself that she could be. Yeah.
Now I want to talk about sex because
Baby.
none of you shy away from it, really, but this is also like quite a hard thing to write well and do it properly. And I know you've probably all got views about the way men write sex in novels, but how do you approach it, and how do you make it? Because you've all done it, and it's effective. It's not, it's not done in a way that you wouldn't win the prize, right? for the worst sex scene. So, tell me, how do you approach it, Nicola?
I guess I kind of prefer not to go into too much detail. Although I have also in the past, I did write a supernatural erotic romance novella once.
Excellent.
So in that time, I got to really get into the details of sex. So that was something I tried in a past life, and it didn't suit me, and it didn't sell well. I think my royalties check for that was $20. So yeah, that was time well spent. But when it comes to these novels that I write now, for me that's not the main part of it. But it is a part of life, and it is fun to write about. But yeah, I think I just kind of try to more explore the feelings of it, or how it relates to the characters and the rest of the story, rather than really getting into those details.
I broke the curse. I wrote all these novels, and for those sex scenes, you would wait for them, and then I'd start them off and just pan to the curtains, because I have, a large family full of people who I don't want to think about them thinking about the sex scenes, like my brothers and my dad and all this. So then, and the fear was that one of those people is going to, my father-in-law or one of my brothers is going to say something about one of the sex scenes. And so when I wrote my novel Gathering Dark, I just seemed to go for the whole thing. And there's actually quite a lot of bondage in that book, because the protagonist in that book is into BDSM. So I just locked off that corner of my mind and just wrote it and just sent it out. And I forgot all about it being in there until my dad was expressing his enthusiasm for this book. He was like, tell me, I'm going to tell you all the ways in which I love this book. And this is your best book. And I was like, please don't tell me any of that stuff. But so my worst fears were realised, that one of them was into it, apparently. And so I just speed dialed my therapist and worked through it, and now I can write sex scenes. And, for this one, you've got one of the criminals, the members of the crew, who ends up sleeping with this woman who's trying to infiltrate the crew. She's a law enforcer, and he's a criminal. So it's two people who really shouldn't be doing that bad thing. So you wait. I made you wait as long as it was possible, and then you get that payoff.
You knew it was coming, but you didn't have to wait a long time.
Yeah, you want that payoff though, and it follows a really violent and stressful scene. So it's a relief, hopefully. But yeah, I give this to members of my family, and I preface it by saying I don't actually want any detailed feedback about this. Just say it was amazing, and they'll leave it at that.
I think the only thing worse than hearing back like lots of positive things is hearing nothing, because I was like, happy birthday, Dad, hope you enjoy lesbian sex scenes, and I've heard like he got back in touch with me quite quickly about Dirt Town, but Girl Falling I've heard.
You've heard nothing?
Not heard anything. Maybe he's just rereading it. Maybe
want at least the dad text of the thumbs up. We were talking about this last night, the K.
Yeah. But I think I struggled too with that idea of putting it out there and what are people going to sort of think about me? You know, it feels very personal somehow to do that. But I did a fabulous course with Chris Neen, the Brisbane writer, and they, in the course, kind of introduced this idea, which feels very simple, but really helped me, which is that every sex scene should progress the plot, and every sex scene is a space to explore power and character. And once I realised, like, I'm not just being a weird perv, like putting this in, but it's actually going to, it's actually, you know, a way that you can explore certain power dynamics in a really explicit way. And something should be different by the end of a good sex scene. Like, something should have changed in the story. And so once all the sex scenes in the book met that requirement for me personally, I felt like, okay, I can handle, like, happy birthday, Murray, here you go.
The other thing that you've all got in these books is the sort of mother-daughter relationship and mother-daughter sort of tension, or in your case, Candice, the sort of scars from the mother-daughter relationship, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder, obviously you're all daughters, but where does this... you know, how much of your own experience do you mind for these things?
How much time have you got? Have you heard my stories about my mother? Oh, my God.
No, I just need to tell this one story too. So we were on the radio the other day with Philip Clark, and Philip said, so Candice, what do you know about crime? And Candice goes, oh, well, I grew up in this big house in Western Sydney. My father worked at the jail, you know, this sort of stuff, you know. He said, Michael, what do you know about crime? I don't know anything about crime.
Well, I would need a whole separate panel to talk about my relationship with my mother and how crazy and toxic and weird and wonderful it is. But yeah, I think that I have explored my relationship with her across several novels, you know, starting before I had my own daughter, you know, and then being in the middle of that as I wrote several books. You know, I wrote a book while I was pregnant, finished it 10 days before I had her, and started the next novel 3 days after I had her I was trying to prove something. You know, and so writing the novels now as she's growing up, and I don't think that I have learned what I'm trying to say, or what I'm trying to say has changed the whole time. But, you know, my relationship with her is so large and varied. Like, people out there in my reader base are like, your mum is a legend. I love your mum. I'd love to meet her and everything, you know. And I go, oh, yeah, she is, isn't she? And then I go to my therapist and I sort of say, you know, the catchphrase of my childhood was, don't breed, it'll ruin your life. You know, and she would throw that out like on the daily. So I'm like, oh, you know, it's, you know, people say to me, you need to write a memoir. I'm like, I got to wait until she's dead, you know, so.
Come on, you've got mother-daughter stories.
Well, I got shirt-fronted at an event. One of my mum's really good friends was, you know, and it was question time. You know, it was my hometown launch. You know, I sort of thought I had a soft audience that I could rely on. She went, well, tell me this. Like, your mum's a lovely woman, so why are all the mums in your books junkies and alcoholics? Tell me that. Yeah. And it's particularly funny when you know my mum and she loves like a Baileys and milk. Like that's like one Baileys and milk. That's like a fun night out for her. So she's not a big drinker at all. She's certainly never done heroin. But there does seem to be this kind of, and I gave an answer that made me cry at the time, which was, I think taking away that stable mother figure is one of the worst things I can think to do to a character. And so it helps me kind of get it to a place where big things are going to happen, because I think my writing got better, or my storytelling got better once I started letting characters make bad choices. And so that felt like a really key pillar that I could kind of take away. So we're on opposite ends, really. I think it's like mothers are fertile ground, right? And so exploring that relationship or making it... Yeah, I think in Finn's case, though, her mum is a form... Well, she's a functioning alcoholic, and she has actively stopped drinking since her youngest daughter died. But I think she's a ride or die. Like, I would much rather take Finn's mum than, say, Daphne's mum, who's much more standoffish and cold. Like, I will take warm and sloppy over kind of cold and like distant. Yeah.
And Magdu's mum as well is also like a big presence in the book, and quite...
Yeah, and a big source of pain for Finn, because when Magdu dies, which is not a spoiler, it's very much on the kind of back cover, the hardest thing for her is that she's not allowed to see her girlfriend's body. And I think that's a real kind of thing for her.
And Nicola, Harriet's relationship with her daughter is also it's more seen through the mother really than the daughter, isn't it? And
Yeah,
pretty
so
complex.
Harriet's daughter is the same age as my daughter, but very different to mine. Well, as far as I know, anyway. I've got a 16-year-old and 14-year-old non-binary as well, and they're both really good kids. So I kind of get a lot of my stories more from what they come home and tell me about the other kids at school. So, and because they're great, they're good at sharing with me. Like Maddie will come home and say, "Oh, other Maddie at school was drinking on the weekend. Can you believe that?" And I go, "So was I at that age, but you're such a good kid." So yeah, I kind of gather from their friends, but I've kind of realised as well, because Maddie's started reading my books now, that I can't really take too many stories direct from the kids. And I was actually chatting with my sisters recently about, because of them being writers as well, about the fact that we can't write about our own kids, and we all started going, we can write about each other's kids. Because as long as our nieces and nephews don't read our books, and they won't, then yeah, we can get away with it.
Yeah.
And it's friendship relationships as well, particularly obviously in yours, it's very, very close and complicated, which basically is the nut of the whole book, isn't it? And those very, very close friendships, particularly ones when you're teenagers and you've grown up with somebody very close, it's a rich, rich field to mine, right?
Well, and I think the thing about Finn and Daphne, they meet and their sisters die within a week of each other, I think it is, and they have this intense bonding from very early on, and sort of that seems like it could only be a positive thing. As the story unfolds and Finn makes herself vulnerable in ways to Daphne that I think she can never conceive might come back to bite her, because we think our friends are kind of going to be there and going to be there forever. But we see the way in which it becomes an instrument of control. And the real pleasure of this book is because we're totally in Finn's point of view, Finn is kind of defending Daphne, and it can almost feel a bit pantomimey, like the reader's like, she's behind you, you know. and that Magdu comes in as a voice of reason, and it's like, actually, when is the last time Daphne apologised for not just for the way you feel, but like for what she actually did when she did something that hurt you or whatever. And it's sort of, we're urging Finn on in that act of sort of self-discovery. And the book, I think, explores that idea of, I could only have told this story in the first person, because that's, if part of the mystery is how do you know if you've got the right story, and I'm telling that story in another, in third person or something, like we are with Finn, and we really don't know how much of this is, and you're kind of rooting for her to like just stand up for herself and take power, but for whatever reason, and the book kind of unpacks all those reasons, she's just not able to push back or to claim the space she needs. And we see how, I think all my books centre around this idea of shame is just such a corrosive emotion, and when you let shame run, and I make a distinction between shame and guilt. I think guilt is healthy. I think guilt helps you stay in the human community, and you feel bad for doing something to someone and you atone for it in some way, and that's a productive emotion. But shame is that corrosive belly feeling of like, I don't belong in the human race anymore because of what I've done. And I think the most destructive thing that Daphne does is exploit Finn's natural, this sort of glowing hot coal of shame that she kind of has at her core. Mm.
And Candice, the group of firefighters, right? This is a group of male friendships, very, very close.
Oh, I love male friendships.
But how much of that experience did those firefighters, when you went and spoke to them, how much were they willing to actually give you about their relationships and about how it works? I
mean, a lot. I told this story yesterday, so bear with me if you've heard it already. But they love to have, these groups of men, they love to have a common enemy, you know. And I was talking to a table of guys at one of the firehouses once I finally convinced some firefighters to speak to me. And I said to them, who's the worst guy you've ever worked with? And they all looked at each other and they said, it's got to be Nick the Dick. And I said, Nick the Dick, what an inventive nickname. Why do they call him Nick the Dick? And they said, I said, is it because he's well endowed or because he's a dickhead? And they all went, it's kind of both, actually. And I said, why is he such a dickhead? And they said, on day one of being at this station, he walked in and he walked right through and into the kitchen and didn't speak to anyone. And he pulled down a coffee mug and he smashed the handle of the coffee mug off on the side of the counter. And he does another one. And they said to him, what are you doing? And he said, oh, well, if your coffee cup is too hot for you to hold without a little handle, then I don't want to run into a burning building with you. And immediately they were all like, right, this is the enemy. We hate this guy. And Nick the Dick struck me as a kind of a Joe Pesci style character, where he's the guy who brings the gun and the baseball bat to the knife fight. One of the guys threw a little firecracker at him one day, and they startled Nick the Dick, and he was like, oh yeah, okay, and everyone knew something was coming back. But he waited until the guy was asleep, and then Nick the Dick brought in a Roman candle, which is one of those, when you're at the fireworks and you hear the boom, boom, and then the one that takes over the whole sky, that's a Roman candle, and nearly burned down the entire firehouse station, just getting revenge for this tiny little firecracker, and so I love that idea that you get this group, and just when they've decided their pecking order, you throw a fox into that hen house, and they all have to sort of band together to get it out. And I love that. I love that. It's very animal. When I do animal rescue, I'm a prolific animal rescuer, and I do it with my daughter Violet, and we rescue native animals, but also anything that comes up. And we attended a guinea pig rescue one time, because guinea pigs, it's hard to tell their gender, and so people buy 2 of them and they go, oh, it's 2 girl guinea pigs, and then suddenly they have 16 guinea pigs, so they just dump them in the bush. So Violet and I, trying to rescue this guinea pig, and they're really hard to catch. And we brought the president of the Guinea Pig Rescue Society came, and we were all orchestrating. It was 6 or 7 people all orchestrating this guinea pig rescue. Anyway, she told me all these amazing facts, and one of them was that guinea pigs, when they're dumped in the wild, they will form an alliance with rats. And the rats will say, hey, guinea pig, you can come and join our rat colony, because you're like a rodent, we're rodents. So you can use our tunnels, and you can eat our food, and you're one of us now, you're one of us. But as soon as the food dries up in that area, they eat the guinea pig first. And is
this a metaphor for male relationships?
Well, I think there's something in it, though. There's something in that in which the rats are all like, yes, you're one of us, kind of. You're one of us in good times. And that's what this group is, I think, in this novel. That's what I was trying to do, is to have them sort of say to Andy, when she infiltrates, you're one of us. But also it's those conversations are happening off to the side. If we have to get rid of her, then we will, so you're one of us for now. It's all very highly strung and tentative, hopefully.
And Nicola, your book's a very sort of recognisable middle-class Sydney suburban setting, with the sort of suburban concerns that go with that, the family, the friendship problems, all of that sort of stuff. How much of that experience do you think is the appeal for readers, and that this is a world that so many of us can relate to?
Well, first, I'm just still feeling distressed about those coffee cups with the broken handles, because it's so unnecessary. And now,
that's what makes it art, though.
Yeah, I'm just really bothered by Nick the Dick, and I don't like him either. I find a lot of my readers tell me that they love the local Sydney setting. They love seeing something that they recognise, and I think it's important because it means that people can relate to it. And it is, you know, my stories are generally meant to be relatable as far as it's everyday life. Everybody has secrets. Everybody has stuff in their past. You know, when you meet somebody for the first time, you're barely scratching the surface. And yeah, I guess just that idea that your neighbour and people, the mothers at school that you meet, have these, you know, dark pasts. So I think having it set in that local suburban setting that's so familiar adds to the realism of these people and these everyday kind of things, and that feeling of this could happen to me.
Do your friends and acquaintances think you're mining them for info?
Absolutely, yeah. Constantly.
And are you? Yes.
Sometimes. I mostly only try to take anecdotes from people, or sometimes names as well. But yeah, I kind of try to get those little glimpses of people's personality and meld them together. I do take a lot of my own life as well and put it in there. I can't help myself. Get in trouble from my husband for that a lot. But yeah, I think it's natural though as well to kind of write what you know.
Yeah, well, so it is, but you also get to a point where you're writing what you don't know, and you're definitely writing what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like New York is not somewhere you know, right?
No,
it's
not.
And what do you prefer, writing what you know, what you don't know, or doesn't it matter?
Oh, it's you know, sometimes I hear these stories and it's something that is so far beyond my experience, like you couldn't make it up. But I'll have so I'll put that in, and that's completely foreign material, but I'll have the character react to it, you know, in my way, how I reacted to it at the time. So the Nick the Dick story is like that. There were things that didn't make it into the novel because they were so graphic or whatever. They got pulled out, and I just loved all those little bits and pieces, and I collect. That's what I do in my life, is I go around and I talk to people and I ask inappropriate questions, and I collect all that stuff up. One of the things that I'm devastated didn't make it into the novel was the story that these guys told me about doing a welfare check on an old man in his apartment. And no one had seen him for 2 weeks, but they'd smelled really nice stuff coming from, like, we think he's in there cooking or whatever. He really was in there cooking. He had created, he was a bit of a tinkerer. He had created a self-heating system for his bath, and then gotten in the bath and died and slow cooked himself. And I was like, I can't make that up. And so I put that in, because I was saying to my publishers, you know, they were saying that's too graphic, and I was saying, but it's real. But they're saying, but it's too graphic, and I'm devastated that didn't make it in. Yeah, and it was too early. They said maybe not on page 3 or whatever. But yeah, those stories, and I'd say to them, like, what's the dumbest fire you've ever been to in your entire life? And they said, oh, this guy was cooking a barbecue out the back with his family, and the gas bottle caught on fire, and so he panicked, and you know, there's flames shooting out of it like that. He panicked and picked it up and ran down the side of his house, setting all of the side of his house on fire, and then he threw it on his lawn and set his lawn on fire, and then it rolled down the hill and set the front of someone else's house on fire as it came to a stop in their front yard. And so it's just, you know, that stuff is, it's getting those things and squeezing them into a narrative so that you don't gross people out, but also so that it's not just a series of short stories. Yeah.
No slow cooking in your novel. Hayley, but is there stuff you had to leave out?
I'm still stuck on the guinea pig thing, and I'm wondering, like, in whose life am I the guinea pig? You know, like they're just fattening me up for the slender days.
It's a little bit like Lord of the Flies feeling as well too, like eat the pig, you know.
I think the thing with this book, like, so Finn is someone who loves the outdoors, and she teaches rock climbing. She's an outdoor educator, and so really the hardest thing about this book was, what would it be like to be someone who likes camping? You know, like, what would it be like to, you know, like, I had to do some hard imaginative labour to write this book, you know. And, you know, she just never feels more kind of alive than when she's halfway through a 3-day hike, and I just can't think of anything worse that I would not rather do, you know. But I think what I like about going into a character that is very different to me is that you can kind of, I often do a bit of a door wedge where I give them something that is very much me, and I think that then allows you to embroider all this other stuff around. And while you love research and you love talking to people, I'm actually really quite closed to other people when I'm writing, because I feel like I'm doing, it's sort of like is it Stanislavski who, like, you imagine yourself as the character, and so I kind of I think like the person that I'm writing as, and I imagine my way into it, and I kind of don't want to, and I'm sure things from life go in, and I was fortunate enough to rock climb in my 20s. I had friends who were good at it and into it, and were able to take me safely, and I climbed outdoors and I did all of that. And I kept thinking, oh, I'll do that again, just to sort of double check my scenario at the end. But by the time I had finished writing a book where a woman falls to her death, and I'd written that scene so many times, like, I never want to go rock climbing, like, ever again. So that's what this book has cost me, really, yeah.
One thing I did learn from your book is that golden retrievers are rich people's dogs.
That's a rich people thing to say. Like,
is this a desire for, you know, hidden, you know?
It was me actively campaigning for a golden retriever, because my partner loves cats and we're not allowed to have a dog. And so the whole time, there's all these tender, I had to cut quite a few of the tender portraits of the golden retriever, because I just would love one, and I'd be able to walk around and find dead bodies when I go jogging, and it'd be great.
This is just a tiny aside. I was saying last night at that dinner, we all went to dinner, and Anna Downs is another author, and she came in and she went, "Hi everyone," and I turned to Jack Beaumont, is another author, and I said, Anna Downs is the golden retriever of the crime writing world. She's everyone's friend, and she bursts in and she's so happy to see everyone. So you could just hang out with Anna a bit more, and then, like, you know.
Hopefully
maybe
the books...
If I'm a hamster, maybe she'd eat me anyway, you know.
Right, maybe.
Hopefully the books will make you rich and you can, you know. Look, if anyone's got any questions, we've still got a bit of time, so if there's anyone in the audience who wants to ask a question of any one of our guests.
You know, they were told at the beginning there would be no questions.
Oh, were they?
If you come to other events, because they're trying a new format where they don't allow questions.
Oh.
So everyone in this hall is just going, holy shit, we weren't informed that we'd be allowed to ask questions.
It's like, if you ask a question, we won't tell the organisers.
Oh, we've got one here.
Here, you're entirely allowed to ask a question.
So, I've read Nicola's books. I haven't read you two ladies, but all three of you, if none of us have read your stories, what one would you recommend?
My new one, High Wire, is actually on tables out there for sale, and it's not supposed to be, because it's not out until the...
And I've read it, and actually that's what I would recommend as well. I really
thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
That's pretty cool to get it before it's out as well.
That's the one I just sold to Ridley Scott. So if you get that, though, it'll count towards my week one sales, and then, you know, so that's... But it's also it's an awesome book, if I do say so myself, so...
And I would highly recommend Hayley's Girl Falling as well.
I can hear that, and that's me. That's an interview. What, you're Googling me while I'm up here? If you... Come on, Dad. I was, yeah, that's the same me, yeah.
Is that allowed? Is that allowed?
No, I just, whenever I hear my own voice, I'm like, it's like a dog whistle. That's me. Yeah.
And now you have to let me throw in a good word for your book. Because you talk about Harriet as this as an unlikable character, but I loved her, and I think she has a natural charm that wins people over, and that's why the people in her life are so compelled and repelled at the same time. And I've met people like that, and I feel like your book did justice to that dance and that sort of the way that she sends people off and then they come back in. And it's such a fabulous premise, like to have someone trying to solve their own murder. Like, it's just one of those ideas you go, oh shit, I really wish I'd come up with that.
Yeah. And now wait, it would be seriously awkward if I didn't join into the mutual love fest. So I've read both of hers and they're both really awesome and great. And
you know what else is good?
One.
Smoke by Michael Brissenden.
Yeah.
Which is definitely for sale out there, so...
Thank you very much.
Really?
I'm halfway through Smoke, so don't give away the ending, though. Okay.
All right.
I'm really enjoying it.
It was the butler.
Good. No spoilers. There's one here. Question here. This is because I've run out of questions.
Do your job for you. Do your job for you, Brisso.
Thank you.
How do you overcome your own, maybe this is not for Candice, how do you overcome your own internal filter when you're writing? Sorry, hun, you know I love you. When I'm writing stuff and I think a bit the same, like, oh shit, are people going to lock me up and think I'm really weird? How do you silence that inner filter?
Who's going to take that one?
No, it wasn't. She said it was not for me.
Because Candice doesn't filter. No.
No, I don't. I just put it in and see if I get away with it. And then they say, no, stop being so gross or weird.
Well, I have to come clean and say this story was very much originated by, I had a really weird and complex friendship breakup, actually. And I think it's hard when you go through a friendship breakdown because in life, your friends are kind of the people that are meant to follow you through life and kind of, and it's almost like a kind of failure and a kind of shame. And I get a lot of people come and tell me stories about their weird friendship breakups. And I was thinking about it the other day, and I'm like, what would be the weirdest thing someone could do? I'll probably write an elaborate crime novel about the friendship break. I've realised, oh no, I'm the really weird one in this situation. And so I just have to live with that. And I'm okay. I think I got a good book out of it, so I'm all right. And that's why writers are terrible people. Yeah.
I think, remember as well that it's a first draft, so just put it in. Don't feel like you have to edit yourself, because if it does need to be edited, that can happen later. But yeah, don't edit yourself, just put everything in, because yeah, it might be what the book needs.
And Candice, is there stuff you've got away with that surprised you?
No, I don't get away with it. Half of this stuff I've already tested it out in person as well. Like, I'm the person at the wedding. I was going to a wedding. I was in the car with my husband and this other couple and the driver, and we're going to a wedding. And the stories started up about engagements and proposals. And I sat there the whole time and I thought to myself, don't say it because it's weird. Don't say it because it's weird. And then I said, Ted Bundy actually proposed to his girlfriend at the time at his murder trial, and because it was at Yuma, and somebody said, who's Ted Bundy? And I was like, well, let me tell you about Ted Bundy. And I started, and the mood in the car just kind of went like this. And then my husband Tim said, Candice is a crime writer. And they went, oh, okay. And then it all came back up and it was funny again. Yeah, you can't be afraid of saying the weird thing, because afterwards you just go, I'm an artist, I'm a writer, and they go, oh, okay.
Well, and I think one thing that is true is, like, people will come up to you convinced that a certain character or whatever is based on them, and it's never the character that is actually anything to do with them, and it's always either more flattering or a really weird over response in a way. Like, people are not that great at seeing themselves in your fiction, and will put themselves in there when they're not, but also kind of, just...
You should try writing books with political figures in it. Then it really becomes interesting. Yes.
Hi, so I know that Nicola and Candice have both written quite a few books, and this is your second book, Hayley. So maybe it's perhaps more pertinent to you, but do you ever find, sort of going on to write that next book, that you're concerned that, your fans would be used to a certain type of book from you, and now you've changed the sort of script on how you write things, or like the themes that you're addressing within the book?
Yeah, I definitely do, because my books have, I've got 7, and they've definitely sort of changed gradually over time. My first couple of books were more of a drama, romantic comedy, and I've always liked the idea of there being a twist, but that started to become more and more the focus, which led me more into suspense, and then eventually into this world of crime, which I hadn't even realised that I'd done until I was asked to be on a crime panel, and I went, oh, do I write crime? I didn't know. So, but I try not to worry about the reader expectations. Even, like, I mean, it is important, but I think it's more important to write the story that you want to tell. And if you start writing for somebody else, then it's not going to be as authentic. So I just focus on, this is the story I want to tell, and whatever genre it lands in is where it lands. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Candice Fox novels come with certain promises that are the same no matter the style of the book. Like, my books are very character focused, and there's depth to the people, and you know where they've come from and why they're here and why they're doing, you know, and it's often an odd pairing. It's a two-hander. And there's sprinklings of humour and weirdness across, you know, what's usually something that's pretty gritty. So all of those characteristics can fit into my heist novel, it can fit into my slow burn mystery, it can fit into High Wire, which is a high octane like thrill ride type thing. You're still going to get all of those promises, and so if I make sure that I have those things ticked off, then I don't worry so much about the style overall.
Yeah, I think I'm quite a selfish writer in that there's definitely comes a stage where I open up to the reader, and I open up and I think about, how do I make this the best book that I can? But to sustain myself through the drafting and the kind of beginning of a novel, I have to go, like, what actually obsesses me and what actually interests me, because in order to get to the point where this is good enough to show someone, I'm going to have to kind of sit with this material. And for me, I'm often writing out of a really deeply held emotion, and also usually a genuine question that I mean, I say usually, I've got 2 books compared to these guys, you know, like in all my books, I think you'll find that I really have to have something at stake, and I'm quite I'm quite open to the opinions of others. I'm quite an anxious person in general, but for whatever reason, one of my few gut core beliefs is that if I should write the book that only I can write, and not the book that other people would like me to write, and the book that will be most likely to communicate with people is the book that has the most of me in it. And it's one thing to be rejected for who you are, but I think it would be worse to kind of do something and put it out there and be rejected for not even who I am, you know what I mean? So I think, and I was lucky with Girl Falling because Dirt Town was a runaway success in a way that I just never, ever, ever anticipated would happen. And I was already 18 months into writing Girl Falling when it came out. And that meant that I had Finn, I had this character that I really cared about. And so I felt like I owed it to her to finish the story. And now I really feel like, no, I just have to, my next book is going to be so different. It'll still be in that crime space because I like murdering people. But I think I just need to go where I'm interested and trust that the readers will follow.
And do you know what, you talk about the central question, right? Do you know what that question is before you start? Does it change as you go through? Do you get other questions?
It sometimes becomes clearer as I go along. I think I'm often asking some version of, what does it mean to love? What is it? How do we make family? Like, how much is it up to other people to kind of meet us in the middle? What do we do with shame? These are all really big questions. Like, I don't think I'm ever actually going to find an answer to that, but I love sitting with one character or a series of characters and kind of letting each of them have their say about that question. I find it so... And I think you have to, like, as a writer, I think it's good to be selfish because you have to get something out of it to sustain you through the process of making it the best book that it can be, I think.
And yeah. Candice, I mean, your books do come with expectations, of course. When you pick up a Candice Fox book, you know it's going to be a sort of a relentless, edge-of-the-seat sort of ride. But they're not all the same. They're actually quite different. They're quite, you know, like it's...
thanks.
Yeah, so...
I'm trying to show that I'm not a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but, you know, sometimes people have had one trick that sustains 24 novels. But, yeah, I try to challenge myself. With the Devil's Kitchen being a heist novel, I was like, I've never written a heist novel, and I feel nervous about doing it. And so when I'm nervous about things, I throw myself in. And that's how I've done it, you know, across my life with all sorts of things. You can't be afraid of failure. So yeah, no, that's...
And you pulled off the heist so well. I told you I was running
Thank
for
you.
a plane at the halfway point of reading this book, and I was so pumped full with adrenaline because and you're so good at setting people against each other. You know, you're really not afraid to kind of. And I was just feeling like I've got to fight against 6 angry men to get to my flight or whatever. That's the level of adrenaline that I had in my body.
You were Andy. You were channeling Andy.
Yeah, and then she punched out 6 innocent men and arrested and taken.
And I'm going from here
dragged
to
off.
my remand sentence.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
And what about you, Nicola? Do you know what's happening when you start? Do you have the central question? Do you know where it's going to go?
I never know where it's going to go. I don't know how it's going to end or how I'm going to get there. And my central question is not as intelligent as what you were describing before, because I kind of don't go in with the idea of exploring themes. I like to think that it does happen out of writing the story, but I'm more just going with the question of, say, for instance, it's always a what if. What if you were dying and so you use your last minutes to figure out who killed you? Or my book before that was a car accident. What if you were the first person on the scene of a car accident and you suddenly went, I know that car, this is my family. So those are kind of what I start with, just these what if scenarios of, you know, of something kind of shocking happening, and then just start exploring it. And then the characters grow from there, and second draft is usually then when I go, okay, now I finally know who these people are, and I can go back and rewrite them and say, oh, they never would say that now that I've got to know them. But yeah, I just start with that one question, which is, yeah, quite simple.
Was there someone else? Oh, no. He's got it all on his Google. He doesn't need to ask.
I have a question for Candice.
Oh, well, look out.
Well, this is just a suggestion. I've got a feeling with this latest business in the CFMEU, there's a real basis for a real friends and enemies sort of plot line there. Not so much about unions, but about the idea of people in a normal sort of business deciding, because the business is in bad shape, to suddenly get some bikie gangs that become involved in their business to help their business and to protect them.
Sure.
Maybe you should just ask your builders.
Yeah, that's right.
I really think, you know, it obviously needs a lot of thought, but there's some really significant beginnings of an important plot line.
Well, perhaps you should
Yeah.
sit down and start writing it.
The pitching sessions.
Yeah, right.
are
Yeah, pitching
happening, yes.
sessions over there. What was your question?
what was your question?
Nicholas,
I was going to ask how you write as fast as you do, because as you were saying, your books...
Tell us.
Yeah, your books aren't all the same. Like, you know, I read the Prison Breakout one and bloody loved it, and you develop these full characters. How do you do it so fast?
I am wary of this becoming a Candice Fox love fest. Not that I wouldn't really enjoy that, but short answer is I've always squeezed my writing in. It's never really been legit. You know, when I was a kid, I squeezed it in. Like, I'm like, oh, it's maths class, great. So I do my writing then, you know, and so I can't calculate a tip. You know, these days, I've always squeezed it in. My mum fostered 155 kids as I was growing up, and there were 6 of us in the house anyway. And so us kids were recruited to, you know, to parent all of the babies. So it was a chaotic household in which there was 20 minutes worth of free time per day for me. So I wanted to be a writer. So that meant, you know, writing as hard as I could for those 20 minutes. And I travel, on book tour, and I have a 5-year-old, and I rescue animals, and I've got all this stuff going on in my life. So when the writing happens, it happens here, and then it happens here for a while, and then it happens here, and and often half my brain is writing the novel, and half my brain is actually listening to what you're saying and interacting, and so that's why I end up putting my keys in the fridge and putting my kid in the oven and putting my dog in the driver's seat of the car and things like that, because I'm
You don't have a golden retriever?
No, I have a cavoodle named Eggnog.
So I'm not going to get the magical answer.
No, it's just multitasking and scatterbrainedness, and a very tolerant husband who helps me take all of those things and put them in the right place,
I also grew up as one of 6, and my mum fostered 2 and fostered about 50. So thanks for outdoing me with your 100 and something.
We are pretty much coming to the end, so I'll just if I go through each one of you, just like where you're at with your next project, whether these sorts of themes that you've been pursuing in these books are going to continue in the next books, and clearly there are themes in these books, betrayal, all that sort of stuff, which are sort of part of the genre and the expectation of the genre. So can you talk about where you're going next?
Yeah, I think one of the questions I mentioned is this idea of family, of finding your own family, making your own family. And just very briefly, my grandparents on my mum's side were circus performers. So my grandmother was an aerialist and showgirl. My grandfather worked with chimps mainly, but also lions, tigers, polar bears. Like, you couldn't make this stuff up. Like, it's a really... And some of the photos I have, like a chimpanzee was best man at their wedding, which was inside the circus. So entering that world has been really interesting and exciting, and so different to this Australian stuff that I've been writing. But I realise the circus is a kind of found family, and so it's really meaningful to kind of explore that. And I'm really having so much fun writing this book. I had no idea writing could be this fun. So
Yeah, great.
Good. Look, it's a long story. So just tune in for me next book, because I accidentally got wrapped up in a cold case serial killing, a real one. And so I'm trying to catch a murderer right now. And I'm writing a crime fiction about that. So just check in with me next time. Be 6 months or so.
My next one's going to be based around a local soccer club, because I play soccer. I've coached, I've managed, and I've joined the committee. And when I joined the committee, I was a bit shocked to see how political it was. And I have been wanting to kill off a soccer club president for some time now. So I figured I can do that in a book. So that might be happening.
One of the great benefits of writing crime is killing people you want to kill. Look, we're all looking forward to reading those whenever they come out, and it's been a fabulous session. I hope you all agree. Please thank all of our guests. And they will be signing books over at the bookshop. I won't be, because I have to drive
to go to Goulburn, like 10 minutes ago. Go.
But there are some signed copies of my books out there if you feel that you want to buy them. Thank you very much.